the LaxFactor podcast. What is up, college lacrosse fans? You are watching episode 287 of the LaxFactor podcast. I'm your host, Ted Hoost, and today we are going to preview the games that are being played this weekend, and I'm actually going to go back and revisit my predictions from last weekend. Every week I'm going to try to predict the winner and the, kind of the margin of victory. I'll call it the spread, but I'm not talking about the betting spread. I'm talking about the margin of victory overall. I'll try to pick it within a 3-goal margin each week. So we'll cover that as well and see how I did last week. But I want to dive right into covering the games that are coming up this week. And we're going to start with, actually, before I do that, as always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the crap out of the video, the podcast, wherever you're watching it. And as always, you can go to LaxFactor.com, support us by buying some t-shirts. We have the LaxFactor t-shirt. We have other non-LaxFactor t-shirts that are just lacrosse related. You can watch our strategy videos and all that crap. But if you're trying to figure out, hey, did the new show come out today? I'm not sure. Just go to LaxFactor.com and you'll be able to see. I am a day late. I apologize for that. So let's dive into the first game I'm going to talk about. And whenever I do the previews, I'll do them in order. I'll do the whole top 20 each week, and we'll do them in order, and I'll make predictions and all that good stuff. So because Notre Dame's not playing yet, and Syracuse is, we're going to talk about them first. Number 2, Syracuse hosting Vermont. Now, I don't think this one's going to be close. I saw some folks on Twitter implying this could be within a 7 to 10 goal range. And I get it. Shit happens. Syracuse at times hasn't beat up on teams the way we think that they might. But they beat the Catamounts last year by 13. And while Vermont brings back some solid talent overall, so does Syracuse, probably more so. So I just don't see this one being all that close. I'm not going to go even deep into this one. I do like Charlie Pope out of Vermont, his 42 goals and 10 helpers from a season ago. They return. They also bring back, I think, about 70% of their offense from a season ago. They lose their second leading scorer, and then what is his name, Fennick or whatever his name was, who was like their 5th or 6th leading scorer. But they generally bring their offense back. Henry Dodge at the faceoff dot for Vermont. Very good a season ago, 58%. But even if he holds up against Mullins, I think Q still rolls this one. So this is going to be the quickest Syracuse preview that I've done thus far. I think Cuse is going to win by 13 to 15 goals in this one. Spallina, Leo, Deere, Hiltz, all these guys are going to put up massive numbers of points. I expect the spread offensively for Syracuse to continue that similar pace where that first line midfield is going to put up, let's say, 7 to 11 points depending on the opponent, and I think the attack will usually follow suit with that. So that balance between the attack and the midfield for Syracuse offensively is what's going to hurt people. But then, like we said, the defense looked good last week. Mullins looked great at the faceoff dot. So I don't see this one being close. I see Syracuse rolling at home, and that is all I have to say about that. Now, quick turnaround for Syracuse, though. They're playing Friday night against Vermont. So this is a Friday night game, 6 p.m., I think, or so, that it faces off. And they turn right around and play Towson Tuesday in their first game against a ranked opponent. So I'll talk about the Towson matchup with Syracuse in Sunday's recap show. We'll do a little bit of previews for some of the upcoming games here after that. The next game that we have to talk about, and I think this one should be a little bit more interesting, is number 4 Maryland at Loyola. Loyola coming off a tough loss to Georgetown, number 10 Georgetown on Sunday. Offensively for Loyola, everyone struggled. Matthew Minikis and Henry Haberman had solid outings, though. 2-2 for Minikis and 2-1 for Haberman here. And, so that's good. But the Maryland defense is not – I think the Maryland defense is going to be much more capable overall than the Georgetown defense that Loyola faced. So I think that's going to be a different animal for Loyola here in this game. Georgetown's Ross Prince made Carson Hall and Sawyer Allen look absolutely silly. We can see here Hall and Allen coming in at 42% and Allen at 0%, whereas Sean Creeder and Shea Keithler, they both played pretty well here. Keithler goes 75%. He wins 6 of 8, and Creeder wins 5 of 10. So I think that's going to be a wash for the most part for Maryland, and they're probably going to win the possessions. Matt Watkins for Loyola was one of their bright spots. He didn't look bad in cage in his first start for Loyola. So that's kind of one of the bright spots. He was 48% in terms of save percentage, but that was good in a loss against a good Georgetown team. So I didn't think that was too bad here. Maryland, on the other hand, they did not struggle in any manner, defensively especially. McNaney looked great in cage against Richmond, and the Terps did a solid job of winning draws between the two face-off men, as I said. Now, yes, this is a rivalry game. Yes, Loyola will be pumped to host a ranked team, especially the Terps here, after getting beat on the road, but I see very little chance of them pulling this upset win over Maryland. Now, I'm not totally sold on Maryland's offense. I am. I mean, they have talent, and Keegan and Bryce Ford proved that the two transfers at midfield are going to do an excellent job of anchoring that midfield. The attack unit of Kelly, Urksa, and Spanos have a lot of promise. They just didn't show up fully against Richmond. Well, let me say Kelly showed up fully, but Urksa and Spanos struggled. But I think that now we're looking at Maryland's 6 deep offensively, easily in terms of quality. Now we just have to see what the output is, and their second midfield line is pretty capable as well. So I'm curious to see who they roll out consistently on that first line, and then what that second line looks like, as it was kind of a little bit all over the place over the course of that Richmond game. Yeah, so I'm not totally sold on that, but if they can put up another 12 goals here against Loyola, then I'm going to start to say, okay, Maryland's offense has now figured itself out. Their defense is good, and then that number 4 ranking is completely valid, and they once again have a championship team, especially with McNaney in net here. I don't think Maryland. One thing that I was going to say here, in terms of me not what I was just stuttering like a moron here. My point with the Maryland offense, I'm not fully sold on them. I'm fully sold on them generally, but what I'm saying is if they're playing a top 20 offense, a team that has a top 20 offense and a top 20 defense, we're talking the Syracuses, the Notre Dames, the Virginias of the world. I want to see how they fare against a team that can both score goals and defend effectively, because I think what we're going to see out of Maryland this year, and this is probably true in previous seasons, is they're probably not going to outscore teams in a big foot race. If the goal count starts creeping up into 30 goals against a team with a top 20 offense and a top 20 defense, I think that the edge probably goes to those other teams depending on who they are. But once again, Maryland could totally prove me wrong and make me eat shit. So my prediction in this one, Maryland, I think will take them by 6 to 9 goals. I think Loyola's a little bit better than I thought they were going to be. And if they can kind of keep it together offensively, and their young goalkeeper can, I don't know if he's young even. Is he a freshman? I just know he's a first-year starter for Loyola. So I think that's going to be important. If they can kind of figure that out as the season progresses, then they may not be quite as down as I thought they were going to be. But either way, I don't see them pulling this game out. I see Maryland taking this one to the bank. Next one, we're going to talk about number 6 Virginia against Colgate. They're actually Colgate's at Virginia. I had high hopes for Colgate against Penn State, and I wanted to see that game be the 1 or 2 goal battle that I thought it was going to be. But hey, a 14-9 loss to Penn State is very respectable, as keeping Matt Traynor bottled up is going to be a problem for teams all season long, not just for Colgate. Now, Virginia, that's going to be a different animal. Colgate's not going to have an answer for the much deeper UVA offense. They're going to have 2 top-notch attackmen. Their first midfield's going to be filthy. So I think Colgate's going to be successful in putting up some points on Virginia, just like they were against the Nittany Lions. But I think while Trainor's a machine, Penn State doesn't have a 1-2 punch like Virginia does with McCabe Millen and Griffin Schutz. So overall, I think Virginia's going to win. Virginia could roll. I think that probably an 8 to 11 goal margin is realistic unless Colgate comes out firing on all cylinders here. Next game we have to talk about is number 7 Duke at Jacksonville in this one. Now, I really, really, really gave Jacksonville the benefit of the doubt in my prediction against Syracuse. I predicted no more than a 9-goal spread, and the reality was far different. Cuse waxed them by 19. Duke proved on Saturday their transfers, Eric Maliver, Luke Graham. Maliver had 4 goals and 2 helpers. Graham was 3 and 2. They're seemingly going to fit right in, albeit that was against a severely handicapped Bellarmine squad here. I was thinking Jacksonville was at least going to be handy capable against Syracuse. They weren't here. So I don't think Duke is going to take it to Jacks quite as badly as Syracuse did. Not because they're not capable, but because they're on the road. I'd assume Jacksonville's going to come out and look like they're actually trying to play lacrosse in this round, because the hard part about looking at Jacksonville against Syracuse is Syracuse is a very good lacrosse team, but Jacksonville looked like they had no answer to any of the questions that Syracuse was asking them. It was like, hey, Owen Hiltz at X. Hey, could I go to the goal on you? And the answer was yes. So I guess they did have an answer. It's just the answer was always yes when Syracuse offensively asked if they could beat the defenders. So I don't think Duke will beat them quite that badly, but I think a 14 to 17 goal spread is very realistic here. So one key also here is I don't know what De La Roca's status is. He got injured, definitely was injured against Syracuse. Very first shot that he faced, he goes down, comes up hobbled. He was visibly hobbled for the entire game. Looked like it was probably just a sprained ankle. So I think if it was something serious, he probably wouldn't have finished the game, which would lead me to believe that he's probably 100% to go here this weekend. But I think that'll matter. I think if he's feeling good and plays well, he's the reason they could keep this to, maybe 14 goals or inside of that. But I'm predicting Duke by 14 to 17 goals, mainly because Jacksonville looked atrocious against Syracuse and because we know Duke can put goals up with the best of them. Next one we're going to talk about, number 10, Georgetown against number 8 Johns Hopkins. This is kind of the game of the week, and Hopkins is just going on a roll here, playing ranked opponents. This is their second ranked game, or the second game against a top 20 opponent. They've already got a win over top 10 win over Denver, albeit I think Denver might. I think Denver might still be 10. Or no, Georgetown's 10 here. So I don't know where Denver dropped to, but at the time Hopkins beat them, they were number 10. And then their 1-goal win over number 17 Towson on Tuesday. I'll talk about that a little bit here later. That's looking really good so far for Hopkins. And now they're taking on number 10 Georgetown. So what a way to start the season, 3 ranked teams. And this was a Hopkins team that people were wondering offensively, how are they going to hang overall? I know number 10 Georgetown, they represent a stiffer challenge than Denver, I think, mainly because I think it's possible that Ross Prince has that dog in him and can make trouble for Logan Callahan, who's off to a great start in his own right. Prince won 80% of his draws against Loyola. Callahan has won 60% of his takes over the first 2 outings. Now, that's going to be a battle to watch, but I think I'd give a slight edge here to Prince. I think the nod defensively obviously goes to Hopkins, although I think the Hoyas played well defensively against Loyola. I'd give a slight edge to Anderson Moore of Georgetown in net over Luke Stout of Hopkins, albeit Stout is the elder statesman of the two, and I loved what Stout had to say in the post-game interview against Loyola. So it sounds like, despite him being a first-year Hopkins student, maybe just living down the road from campus or whatnot makes him feel really comfortable, because it looks like he's taking a solid leadership role for this team on that defensive side of the ball, which is something they needed as you're transitioning and you just have a one-year goalie in terms of transfers between the last 2 years here. Erlin was their goalie a season ago, transfer from Cornell. Now they've grabbed Stout here. So definitely nod goes to the Hopkins defense, though, overall. And I think that, what are you going to say here? We don't know really what Georgetown's defense is going to look like yet. Now, offensively, for Hopkins, that's where the questions have kind of been. And everyone was like, hey, well, maybe they answered him against Denver. But what worries me is that while Hunter Chauvette has been the most consistent thus far, factoring heavily in each of the Jays' first 2 games, Russell Melendez and Matt Collison both had decent first games, and they were very quiet against Towson. So Hopkins thanking God that Brooks English showed up in that game against Towson. He had a solid outing. But Collison was really quiet. I think that between Collison and Melendez, I think they only had 2 points combined in that Towson game. So those guys have to show up. Those guys can't be quiet. Now, yes, Hopkins won the game, but it was too close of a game for Melendez and Collison, who are supposedly their two best players, at least in terms of leading and generating the offense and drawing slides. So I didn't like, if I was a Hopkins fan, I wouldn't like how quiet they were in that game. But alas, that shit happens. So I'm expecting a dogfight in this one, but I like Hopkins a little bit more than I like the Hoyas, mostly because of Hopkins defensively, I think, has that big edge. I think the face-off dot will be a battle. If it goes grossly into Prince's hands, then that's going to change the face of the game, and Georgetown will probably eke out a one-goal win or so. I think that's going to be Georgetown's main hope, is that they can win at the dot. 60% at the dot for Georgetown keeps this within one goal, and they have a chance to win. If that doesn't happen, I think if they split at the dot, Hopkins probably separates just a little bit by the end. So I'm going to predict Hopkins by 1 to 3 goals in this one, but this should be a hell of a game. Definitely the game of the week here overall. What do we got next? Penn State. Number 12, Penn State at Villanova. Now, I think this game goes the same way as the Colgate game. Matt Trainor's going to run roughshod all over Villanova's defense. He put up 5 goals with 2 helpers last week. I figure he's going to put 6 or more points up in this game. I don't see sense waxing on about some of these games because we kind of know what the outcomes are going to look like for some of them. Villanova, they had their time in the sun playing spoiler to teams in February. I think they were the big Yale killer in the years that Yale was, top 5 in the country. But I think Trainor gives this Penn State team a little bit of swag. Frassian in net, so long as that defense shows up in front of them, is going to be very tough to beat. I don't think Penn State didn't run away with it against Colgate. And actually, you know what? I'm going to make an adjustment on the fly here. I had this when I wrote this up. Penn State by 2 to 4 goals. I'm regretting that. So I'm going to change this to Penn State by 5 to 7 goals over Villanova. And I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State puts 10 up, beats them by 10. That could happen. But I'm just not 100% sold on their offensive depth yet, even though I think defensively they're going to end up being a very good team. So that's all I have to say about that one. Denver at Air Force. Number 14, Denver at Air Force. Now, Denver's going to be playing a little bit angry after losing at home to Hopkins. They proved to me that they're a little bit better offensively than I thought they were. The duo of Mick Kelly and Cody Molosky each showed up. They both put up 4 points. Air Force is coming off a loss to Lafayette, and when you come off a loss to Lafayette, that's never a good thing. So I really don't have a whole lot to say about Air Force so far. Cole Rassis, 3 goals. Josh Yago, 1 and 2. But, I mean, we're talking about a loss to Lafayette here. So Denver's going to win this one. Now, once again, my spread might be wrong, and I'm almost a little bit regretting it. I have listed Denver by 7 to 9 goals, and I'm going to stick with that one. I'm not going to change it on the fly, but once again, I wouldn't be surprised if Denver comes out raging angry, beats them by 13. That could absolutely happen, especially because Air Force lost to Lafayette. Sorry to Lafayette fans and all that crap, but let's just say it's not a name synonymous with getting early wins in the season here. All right, next up, number 15, Michigan against number 16, North Carolina at North Carolina. I think this will be a really solid matchup. Michigan coming off beating up on Marquette, so we know they're going to be able to put up some points. I was wondering about that, but then again, how good is Marquette? I have a very good feeling, though, about this North Carolina team. They were young a season ago. They have a roster full of former top recruits, and at some point, it's time to piss or get off the pot for Carolina. They didn't fare well. Michigan specifically didn't fare well against ACC teams a season ago. I think, Notre Dame beat them by 10, Virginia by 8 or something like that. So I don't think Carolina's anywhere near those teams' caliber, especially not Virginia from a season ago and Notre Dame from a season ago. They were definitely not up to par at that point. And I don't think they played, but if Michigan did play Carolina a season ago, let's just check. I think I already checked and they didn't. Yeah, but if they did, I would have liked Michigan's chances against Carolina. This year, however, I don't think this isn't the same Michigan team. They have lost some talent to graduation. So I think that Carolina offensively is probably going to be able to score some goals. And just because Carolina generally has higher ranked recruits across the field, I think at some point that has to pan out for him. I think if Hunter Taylor for Michigan can play well in cage, I think he's the key. He's kind of streaky at times. He had a good outing last week. I think if he can play well in cage, then that could keep things tight and it could go Michigan's way. But I'm thinking Carolina is going to handle business at home. I'm going Tar Heels in a close one, 1-3 goals. They're going to win by 1 to 3 goals. Next one, we are talking about Delaware at number 19, Utah. I know very little about this iteration of the Delaware lacrosse team. I've really tried to keep my focus so far on the top 20 teams, and as teams start playing, then we'll start talking a little bit more in depth about their rosters, their talent, and all of that. But I do believe, by most accounts, Delaware is going to be a little bit down from what they were a season ago. I thought that might be the case with Utah too, but they come out, they beat up on ranked Ohio State in their first game. And I imagine at this point they've got a pretty heavy pep in their step, being ranked number 19, coming off a, kind of beating up on Ohio State a little bit. They controlled that game throughout. Luke McNamara, Ryan Steins, Cody Hart, they all put up their own version of a 5-point games. McNamara 5-0 off 12 shots. Steins 2-3 off of, McNamara took 12 shots. I think I said that. Steins 2-3 off 4 shots, and then Cody Hart 4-1 off 9 shots. So that's pretty good. And then the scoring behind them filled out nicely. At the faceoff dot, Tyler Cloakel, like I said, I can't pronounce that damn kid's name. 21-29, 72% at the draw at the dot. So that's going to be a big deal. I just don't see Delaware hanging in this one overall, and this is going to be another one where I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to kind of change my prediction here. I don't see Delaware having enough defensive depth in this iteration of their team to account for all the scores that Utah has. And I mean, if Utah can take it to Ohio State the way they did, and that's not a fluke, I had predicted Utes by 2 to 4 goals, assuming maybe that 6-goal, 7-goal win or whatever it was against Ohio State was a little bit of a fluke. But I'm going to change this. I'm going to say Utah by 4 to 6 goals. And I don't even know if that's enough, but that's what we're going to go with. Utah. Now we're going to change it. I'm going Utah 5 to 7 goals. I really want to get the spread right here because we're going to go through and see how poorly I did against the spread, or picking that goal, that win margin last week. So yeah, Utah by 5 to 7. Last top 20 matchup, I believe, if I got this all right, is going to be Rutgers at Stony Brook. I know almost nothing about Stony Brook, to be honest here, but I know Rutgers, they still have Dante Koulis, 3-2 in their first 2 games. Colin Cardilla, 3-2 over their first 2 games, and then Colin Kelly, 4-1. So they got 3 guys sitting at the top here that have 5 points over their first 2 games, and that Rutgers offense was something I was kind of wondering about overall. In the win over Lehigh, Rutgers looked good. They beat LIU. That's what they're supposed to do, so that's not all that impressive. I don't see Stony Brook surprising anyone in this one here, and I think Rutgers is going to win another one by a margin. I don't know that it's going to be a huge margin, but let's say Rutgers by 6 to 8 goals. Stony Brook isn't like a basement-dwelling team generally, and so I don't see them just coming out and getting waxed. But before I finalize this, let's change that. I'm going to go Rutgers by 8 to 10 goals. You're seeing me do this in real time, guys, here, and changing up my predictions. I'm going Rutgers by 8 to 10. Stony Brook, they lost some offensive talent, and they were only 4-10 a year ago. Rutgers only beat them 16-12. Oh, man, did I make a mistake? Yeah, we're changing this again. We're changing it again, guys. We're going to change this back. Control Z. Okay. Rutgers 6 to 8 goals. It's my show. I get to do whatever the hell I want. This isn't a Dave Portnoy pizza review, or once he gives a score, he can't change it, which I think even he's broke that rule before. So, Rutgers by 6 to 8. All right, now let's look at the other games here. I'm not going to even make predictions. I'm just going to rip through so everybody knows what's going on. We got Friday night. We've got a slew of games here, though. Wagner at Hofstra, Merrimack at UMass, Holy Cross at Queens, Lehigh at Fairfield. Those are all being played Friday. The big game Friday night, even though it's going to be a blowout, is number 2 Cuse, just because everyone wants to watch Cuse. I did miss Army and UMass. I knew that I was going to miss a couple of ranked games here, and that's why I wanted to go through these. Neither team has played. This is not going to be a close game. Army's returning a wealth of talent. They've got 3 legitimate All-American, we're talking first or second team All-American contenders. So I think Army's going to blow UMass out, and because I'm forced to do this here, we're going to put the Army prediction in here. Number 13, Army at UMass, and I'm going to predict in this one, Army by, how many goals we want to go here? We're going to say Army by, do they really beat people up this bad? Let's see what Army did against UMass last year. 13-12, and I don't think this is an iteration of UMass. Yeah, that's not going to happen here. I'm going to go Army by 7 to 9 goals against UMass. Army's going to win. I don't think there's any chance that I don't think UMass has a chance in hell. But, I don't think it's going to be a total blowout here. I don't think Army does that first. It's everybody's first game between the two of them. So that's it with that one. Did I miss anybody else here? Are there any other good games that are kind of on the fringe? Robert Morris traveling to play Richmond. I think Richmond's going to handle that one, but I'd like to see offensively against a team that they're better than. How many points can they put up? Because that'll tell us a lot about how they're going to play through the rest of the year. Boston U, a team that I expect to be down from the last 2 or 3 seasons here. They're going to play Siena, so that'll be interesting to see. Can Boston U kind of keep that pace? I don't think they're going to keep pace with what they were against top opponents, but like a Vermont overall, can they still beat the teams that they are always supposed to beat? Can they become that team long term? I think that'll be interesting to see here. And that's it, man. Those are some boring games. We got Iona and Hampton. That should be an interesting one in terms of kind of basement dwelling. And then, like we said, Monday, Syracuse is going to turn around and play Towson. All right, let's stop that. I want to rip through now quickly and just talk, randomly about the predictions that I made last week so we can see how I did. In terms of picking winners out of the teams, the top 20 teams contest, I was 7-1 picking winners, which, no duh. It's the first week. There was a bunch of blowouts. It was pretty easy to pick winners there, but I was only 2-6 picking the proper margin of victory. So in that Jacksonville-Syracuse game, I predicted a 6-9 goal win for Syracuse, and that was me being diplomatic, thinking Jacksonville might come up, play really tough in the Dome. I was worried about the Galloway effect maybe playing into it a little bit, but that was not the case. So I got the winning team correct, but I lost the spread by a ton as Cuse won by 19. Richmond, Maryland last week, I predicted a 5 to 8 goal spread, and I was correct. I picked the winner, Maryland, and I picked the spread of 5 goals, so I win on that one. And actually, I picked the spread a little too wide. I'm supposed to do a 3-goal margin, and with that one, I went 4-goal margin that I had picked. Bellarmine Duke, I picked 10 to 12 for Duke, way off. I picked the winner, but it was a 19-goal spread, so I got that wrong. Hop Denver, I said 1 to 3 goal game. I got both correct. It was a 3-goal game in favor of Hopkins, so yay me. Loyola Georgetown, I said it was going to be a 1 to 3 goal game. I legitimately thought that was going to be the case. It wasn't. Georgetown ends up winning by 7. I picked the winner correctly, just lost the margin. Colgate and Penn State, I called that a 2 to 4 goal game. I got that correct. I did not pick the margin correctly, though. I was right outside it, though. What was it, 14-9? So I just missed it, but I did get the winner correct. Michigan Marquette, I figured 7 to 9. The reality was different, mainly just because Marquette didn't score any goals. I think I would have been right if Marquette could have got their shit together offensively, but they didn't. Michigan won by 13, so I picked the winner, got the margin wrong. Ohio State and Utah, got the winner wrong. I picked Ohio State. I think most people were picking Ohio State in that one. So, yeah, I lost both on that. So, Utah won by 6. So, I got both wrong on that one. And for the week last week, I was 7-1 picking the winners in the top 20 games. And I was 2-6 picking the margin of victory here. So, I think I'll get that better. I'll dial it in now that we've seen everybody play in the first week. I bet you this week I do a little bit better on the margins. I don't expect to even have a week where I get the margins correct. I think that's going to be hard, but I figure it's at least a worth doing so that I can kind of see how accurate I am at gauging the quality of some of these opponents here. One thing we're going to do before we quit is we're going to talk about the Hopkins game here, just briefly here. I'm not going to go on about it. Rutgers beat up on LIU, so who cares? Of course, Ohio State should come out and beat Detroit Mercy, so I'm not, big on talking about that one either. In terms of Hopkins, and this is what I was talking about here, Brooks English comes out and is their leading scorer in this one. He goes 1-3. Hunter Chauvette, now considered their most consistent offensive threat, sniping corners, 3-0. And what worried me here was we have Scott Smith, a defender, scoring a goal. I believe Callahan had a goal. Correct, he did. What I don't like is Melendez only got 3 shots off and has an assist, no goals. Collison only gets 4 shots off, 1 goal. I don't think Hopkins is going to win many top 10 games, let's say, without both Melendez and Collison showing up, or at least one of them showing up. So right now, just like I was saying with Maryland, saying, hey, Keegan and Ford looked really good, but Urksa and Spanos were a little quiet. Thank God for Kelly for Maryland. I think Hopkins, we're kind of starting to see that, hey, they had to replace some people offensively, and the depth in scoring isn't going to be as bad as I thought it might be for either of these teams here, with some guys stepping up and playing well, especially for Hopkins, just getting points out of weird places like Scott Smith scoring a goal and Logan Callahan getting one off the draw there. Callahan had a good game again, I believe. Callahan won 58% of the draws. So far this season, he's been a bright spot here for Hopkins. And then Stout in cage has been solid. Like I said, Stout, just in terms of his demeanor and the things he said in the post-game interview, I thought that was incredible. And he sounded smart, and he sounded like he was all in on Hopkins and everything like that. So that's going to be good for Hopkins long-term as well. And that's it. I've rambled on here for 31 minutes on a Thursday. Sorry that I missed you guys yesterday. Once again, work always gets in the way, but I carved out time here this morning to get this done. So Sunday, I'll be back Sunday to do the recap show, and then we'll start talking a little bit about the games that are popping off on Monday as well. So go to LaxFactor.com, get yourself a t-shirt, support us that way, share the crap out of the show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and Hoost is out. The LaxFactor Podcast.